I'm Adrien Pion. I'm not an economist, I'm a psychologist. And so I will present you two templates I created with a team of international researchers and explain to you why we try to create these templates in order to improve the way we do meta-analysis. So what is meta-analysis? Meta-analysis belongs to cumulative science. So it's the way we synthesize evidence. For some, it is the highest level of scientific evidence. I tend to disagree. We can talk about it later. But still, it can help us to make recommendations. For example, Cochrane make recommendations for therapy, for drug administrations, and stuff like that. So it's very important to have meta-analysis to make sure what we try to to make sure that that we can make good recommendations. It helps us understand differences between individual studies. If some studies show an effect and other studies doesn't show these effects, so we can think about why there is such a difference. And what is interesting with meta-analysis is that we have more and more meta-analyses that are published over time. And so we can see an exponential since 2005, and quite interesting too. 1/3 of all meta-analyses published are from China. And the method of doing a meta-analysis is constantly in motion, and many different fields have their own method to make meta-analysis. So what is wrong with meta-analysis, or how we can improve meta-analysis? Let's see for example, in psychology, and then we will see in economy. In psychology, we have two interesting studies. The first one is called Methodological Quality of Meta-Analysis Index in PsycInfo. PsycInfo is a database of psychological studies. Leads for Enhancements, a meta-epidemiological study. And what the researchers there did, they used a criteria from the Amstar 2, which is a scale. It's not really important. And they found that from the 206 meta-analyses that were published, 95% of them were rated as critically low quality. So this is a big problem, and if we focus on the protocol, only 11% of meta-analysis published a research protocol, which means that only for 11% of the studies we know what researchers did. Another study, which is called an empirical review of research and reporting practices in psychological meta-analysis, they did quite the same thing. They took 384 psychological meta-analysis, and they found three things. First, that there are several research practices. There are several research practices conducted by meta-analysis that are ultimately not reported. So people did things they don't report. Some aspects of meta-analysis research appears to be connected as disappointingly low rates. So there are things they have to do, but they don't do. And the adoption of reporting standards, including the MARS, has been slow to non-existent within psychological meta-analysis research. So these are two very recent research who shows that researchers who are conducting meta-analysis don't do it the best way possible. And in economy, so I don't really know a lot about economy, so I just took some research and we can discuss about their relevance. The first thing is that social and cognitive psychology, they have more in common than micro and macroeconomy, whatever other type of economy. So it's difficult to assess the overall quality of meta-analysis in economy. We still find certain behaviors that should be avoided in doing meta-analysis. So I have two examples from one study. The first one from Xu and Al, they use many data points on social capital and health from many studies, and this is a big problem because when you use a lot of data points, you will find an effect even if the effect doesn't already exist. And another study collected 71 variables to explain heterogeneity, so it's obvious that this researcher will find an effect to explain heterogeneity. You cannot leave the chance here not to find an effect. And so this team of researchers here, they created guidelines for meta-analysis in economics. And these two studies were examples they used in their studies. And what they say at the end is that while the diversity in available data and methods is necessary and enriching, it can also obscure potential abuse of meta-analysis in economics. So this is a kind of way to have a potential abuse. So we have to be careful with this. So they modified their guidelines. So this is called the AIR network, and they modified their guidelines to rate the minimum quality standards for this important and rapid growth phase. Another example is from macroeconomics. It is called an overview of the characteristics and quality assessment criteria and systematic reviews of pharmacoeconomics. And again, they took many systematic reviews. They used the Armstrong scale again, and they found that the methodology remained to be improved, and the quality assessment criteria were gradually unified. So that's not that bad, but not too good. So we can still improve. Another example, which is the most important example we have here, Fabio in his presentation asked a question: is there too much reliance on p-value by their own? And this is the kind of answer to this. So this is a study from Stanley and Doukouliagos here, and they said that the combination of research conditions that are prevalent in economics are likely to cause conventional meta-analysis to have notable biases and high rates of false positives. What I showed two slides ago was a possibility to have high rates of false positives. All meta-analysis methods fail to distinguish a genuine effect from the artifact of publication bias reliably, and there are common conditions for economic research. The rate of false positive revealed in their simulations is a serious problem that threatens the scientific credibility and practical utility of simple mathematics. So what we can do, and they say what we can do is that all these problems disappear when systematic reviewers give full accommodation to resolve practical significance instead of statistical significance of the effects in question or employ meta-regressions to explain the high effect. So what is the practical significance? Yes. This is this slide. So practical significance is not about is the p-value significant or not, is how much we have to care about the effect, how much the effect is important or not. It's about the magnitude of this empirical effect. Yes, so for economic policy, practical significance is the most relevant standard. Computing statistical significance for practical significance is at the heart of so much of the misuse and misunderstanding of p-values and conventional use in non-hypothesis testing. So yeah, this is the effect size, the importance of the effect, the magnitude of the effect. So we can improve meta-analysis if we focus on the effect size rather than the p-values. Another study, I'm not sure if this one is really relevant, but these researchers, they took many hypotheses that were tested in leading economic journals, and they found that the extent of p-hacking and publication bias varies greatly by methods, and some methods, so they found no evidence that paper published in the top 5 journals are different to results. And the revised universe submits through process doesn't mitigate the problem, and that they found, although they found no evidence that things are improving 2 times. So I don't know really how they test the extent of p-hacking. It could be a really interesting question. But my point here is that meta-analysis are in the form of garbage in, garbage out. If we have one bad study that we take into the meta-analysis, the result of the meta-analysis, the output will be bad. So we have to make sure to have the best effect size included, effect size that are reliable and not the result of questionable research practices. So we have to be very cautious about it. The last one, it is called Does Research on Economic Sanctions Suffer from Publication Bias? So they took 36 studies, and they found by an econometric analysis that there are significant publication bias in the results. Bias is significant on all of the three variables of interest, and the genuine impact of these variables on success and failure of sections after correction for publication bias is insignificant. So we have to make sure that this again that these studies are doing are done in a good way in order to put them into a meta-analysis. So we have to be very cautious about this. How we do it. So what are the features of high quality in meta-analysis? The first one is that they follow standard report guidelines. We have several report guidelines to Prisma protocol, the MRS protocol. For this template, we use the Prisma guidelines. They are transparent and reproducible methodologically and statistically. Methodologically means we know why we included the studies or excluded other studies.
Can you say something again about the Prisma?
I have a screenshot to start. And statistically means that we know what the meta-analysis did in their statistical analysis. So we have to share our R scripts to be clear. They examine systematically and they try to reduce or take into account publication biases. We will talk about it later. And they are not themselves victim of publication biases, which mean that we should publish every meta-analysis, even meta-analysis that show new effect or no effect, in order to reduce the final problems. So how our templates looks like, we have 4 files. The first one is a manuscript in the form of introduction, method, result discussions. We have 1 supplementary file with the templates for emails. We have checklists, we have the diagrams and additional resources to help with researchers. 1 Excel template to code the data and 1 Airmancom code template to analyze the data and create a PDF. And we can copy paste what's inside the PDF into the main manuscript. So it's very easy to use. If you don't know how to use Airmancom, it's very easy to use. And it is in the form of register reports format. So register reports is a way to publish studies where you develop the idea, you design the study, so you write the introduction and the method sections. Then you send it to peer reviewers, and they say, okay, at this time you will find what you want to find with your method. So they accept your manuscripts, you collect the data, you write the reports, and then you send it again. And if you follow what you did, what you wanted to do at the beginning, they will publish it no matter the results. So they won't care about if you find something or not. They just will care about if you follow what you wanted to do in the stage 1. So this is a way to make sure your meta-analysis will be published without statistical significant effects. So it looks like this. This is the main manuscript. You have in blank test what is already written, so you don't need to change anything, or you can change whatever you want. And highlighted and in brackets, you have what you need to adjust to your own meta-analysis. So for example, in the title, construct name and construct name for correlation meta-analysis. This is for the correlation meta-analysis. You just have to change with, for example, moral values and percentage rates, correlation meta-analysis, and you have your title. So this is more for psychology, but you can maybe think about ideas in economy. We have tables and figures that are proposed to be filled. You can use them, delete them, change them, whatever you want. But we have many tables and figures. The figures are automatically created with the Airmancom scripts. And in smaller font, we have indications on how to use the template for this section. So after every section, we have a little note to explain what we think would be best to put inside this section. For what is really important, I think, to include in meta-analysis, we have the checklist. So the checklist is the Prisma 2020 checklist. If you want to know how it works, it's very easy. You have several items, and you just said, okay, this item we have it on this page, this item we have it on this. For example, the title we have it, the abstract, then it is the abstract, then it is the rationale, the objective, etc. So you just have to write here where it is. So we already filled the location here for the templates, and it will change a big template, you just have to indicate the new location. So it's very easy to use. About the transparent diagram and inclusion-exclusion criteria, we have the PRISMA guidelines too. So you just have to say, okay, from this database, we found that many studies with that keywords, and we included, excluded for this or that reasons, and at the end, we included this many studies. So this is very easy to use, and you know why you included or excluded studies based on what reasons. Data sharing, so I told you about the Excel file we use. It looks like this. So it's, you have lots of columns to fill that is very easy then to upload it to an OSF file, another repository, so that you share your data, reproducible analysis with the R scripts, and publication bias test. Here the statistical publication bias test. So the 3PSL, PFP, studio.com, etc. And everything is made by the Airman script, so you just have to copy paste what's inside here. So it's very easy to use too. And finally, we use several other tests. For example, the test of statistical power, which looks like this. So to be simple, if your studies with your data points is in the red, it's that you have a low power, and if it's in the green area, it is well powered. So this one is from one of my meta-analyses on commitment theory that is called the butterfly effect. You ask someone to make something, and you say, but you are free to accept or refuse, and you see if they comply more to the request. And most of the studies in this area are lack of power, have a huge lack of power. And this one is for the vicarious dissonance cognitive effects. So you see people doing something wrong and you feel bad, and so you will try to do something right. And they are, some of them are well powered and some of them aren't. So the conclusion here is more touchy. So it's interesting for the mechanism. We have email templates to ask authors to have the raw data or to ask for potential not published studies, and you just have to adjust and send them to the researchers. And what I still need to do now is to create the ROC2 analysis. I will talk about it at the end of my presentation. We have two templates. One template is for experimental meta-analysis. Experimental meta-analysis compares the difference between two groups, the experimental group and the control group for most of them. And the objective is to find the effect of the experiments. And it's based on HG. If you don't know what it is, it's a modification of QuentsD. And the second one is the correlational or psychometric meta-analysis. It measures the link between two constructs, correlation. Based on Pearson's error, and it can evaluate interrelationships between subconstructs, which means, for example, if you want to know the relationship between moral values and personality traits, you also can find interesting to know the relationship between personality traits like extraversion and consciousness. You want to know the relationship between the two. It does it automatically. And finally, it takes into account the reliability of the scales when measuring the link between constructs. Convex alpha is the most used coefficients, or McDonald's omega. So this is a kind of way to reduce publication bias, because we will weight the studies based on how reliable they are with these coefficients. The templates are available through this link. You just have to write MGTO meta-analysis registrar report, and you find it very easily. Although we can send a mail, so I can share with you. This slide is just to tell you that it works. Like, we can publish studies with these templates, so these templates works. And the last slide. We have a question, will templates improve the quality of meta-analysis? So I hope yes, at least a bit, so that I didn't put too much effort for nothing. But it won't be enough. We need better training and dissemination of good practices. And for example, this study, it is called Adherence of Systematic Reviews to Cochrane ROC2 Guidance. Well, presently for a meta-epidemiological study. So I have to talk a bit about what is RUP2. We have lots of tests, statistical tests, to try to assess publication bias. These tests they are not bad, but they have a priori that are that we cannot really find true. For example, if you want to test one publication bias type, we have to assure to make sure that the other type of publication biases that doesn't exist. So it's not possible. We have several types of publication bias in the same meta-analysis. So what we can do is to use the RUP2. RUP2 means risk of bias 2. And this is not a statistical test. It's a descriptive or qualitative test. So you have questions and you have to say yes or not. And after that, with the number of yes or no answer, you can say, okay, this study is at high risk of bias or low risk of bias. The questions are, was this study pre-registered or not? Was the experimenter aware or blind to the hypothesis, etc., etc. So this is the best way we have to make sure the studies included are at risk of publication biases or not. And what they did here is it's the same protocol that we saw in the other studies. They took 208 systematic reviews. They tried to assess adherence, and they could assess adherence in 137 systematic reviews. And 12 declared using RUP2, but actually used RUP1, which is not completed. And 59 did not report the number of primary default codes, which is a big problem because RUP2 is a default code level, not at the study level. And so at the end, they said in conclusion that many systematic reviews did not adhere to RUP2 guidance, as they applied the tool at the study level rather than at the outcome level. So it means that even if we have the templates, even if we have the protocol, it doesn't mean that researchers we use it the best way possible, and so we need to train them and work together in order to improve the way we do meta-analysis. I think this is one of the core goal of Synopsys, is to help other researchers and collaborate and with other researchers in order to improve the way we do science and the way we synthesize evidence. Thank you.
Any questions? Others, more question on what you said in the beginning about this practical significance. I mean, if someone, there are many people who are Asian in their approach, so they for credible sets, and what's that always make a step probabilistic statement about the effect. Okay, so for example, you might get a condition which is like significant in terms of amplitude, but you might get some overlap with zero on the left, let's say, side. So, I mean, then people just argue that some probability, a significant probability that this coefficient, this effect is positive. So in a way, I would say contradiction there. So meaning that the practical significance and statistical significance are not really different in that case, because you present the credible set, so people can see.
The idea of saying that the effect is positive is not about practical significance. Practical significance is not about it's positive, negative, or null. It's about how much we have to care about this effect.
But usually it's a question asked to say, okay, what is the effect of this policy on this? Yeah. So then the question we talk about is on paper. So that's your question. What is the effect of this big or not? Or significant or not? And then when you do things in a visual fashion, you report of probability distribution. So you can see whether this probability distribution has a lot of mass on the positive side, let's say. So people can judge how significant the effect is. without time your control saying something statistically or not.
The idea also is like if you want to make a policy, how much it will cost, how much it will people will adhere to this policy, and how much it will make a change. So this is more the effect is more about that. For example, if we took the example of images, the effect is really small. So the practical importance is really small, but it's very easy to apply them. So the cost is very nil. So it has practical significance because even if the effect is really small, it can make a big effect if we use them all over the world. So this is more this way of thinking about practical significance. I don't know if it answers directly the question.
Yes, it's more general. So I was thinking more about the size of the effect. Thinking about exactly what's it.
Yeah, the size of the effect is like the coins D or the HDD. This is all I think about it for the experiments.
Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. As a social scientist, it is my instinct not to have too much solarization. So the Excel kind of benefits remains, very important. We'll just change the highlighted parts. It may be idea for, psychology or physics or chemistry. I was wondering whether it would be feasible to develop a somewhat more flexible approach to this, like sort of what's permissible, what not, for what we try to do in a living, depending on the field.
So before we created these templates, there are several protocols that were published, and we saw, as I presented at the very beginning, that many researchers didn't use the protocol. And we thought that it was because it was too hard to adjust them to their own meta-analysis. So what we thought is that we can help researchers by presenting them a typical meta-analysis, and so they can just compare these templates, these typical meta-analysis, with what they want to do, and just make sure that what is inside the templates is also inside their own meta-analysis in terms of protocols. So this is like an example of how we can use these protocols. But everyone is free to use. I talk about it with the figures and the tables. Everyone is free to use what they want. So they can just copy past one paragraph or one sections. It is very up to them. It's just an idea. It just the idea is to help researchers make sure that they use correctly the protocols. This is just the way we thought about it. And so they can just take the R scripts and see what's inside, copy paste some part of the script and use them. This is open to everyone. So there are no problem. And also, this is I think the three ways we will share together. It could be a good time to create new templates more adjusted to economy, for example.
Okay. Any more questions? You have 1 minute. So these templates are for the registered report.
Yes.
Stage only, not for the final.
So inside we have the introduction and method sections are well developed. This is very long, so it's to make sure that researchers can do that can follow the protocol at the beginning for the stage 1. But after you have more degree of freedom for the discussion for the result and discussion sections. So for it, everything is highlighted. Actually, we just say, okay, you can put it your result here in this form or in this form. Maybe you can put it put a figure like this here, etc. So it's you have more flexibility in the result and discussion based on your own data and based on your own results. So yes, it's a template Yes, the protocol is very important for the method section actually. So yeah.
Can you have your already used this or?
Yes, I show some example there. So there are several studies published, and some of them that are accepted in the stage 1, and now we are trying to collect the data. The last one here, we just collected the data and we analyze them. I think Sarah will send it to reviewers like this week or next week for the stage 2. So yes, it works.
Thinking that you presented this protocol and the examples you gave for the titles, for example, are pretty basic correlation between A and B.
Yeah.
What happens if the phenomenon is much more, it involves more variables, or the published studies were analyzed with with the models with 10 covariates and mediators, moderators. Would the protocol accept?
Yes, so the major answer here is that we have to think cautiously if we want to do a meta-analysis with many covariates and many. Actually, we can talk about moderators. So you can have a main effect and then moderators that will improve the effect or make the effect disappear. So this is in the templates. But for example, this one, the vicarious dissonance, this is a tricky effects because in order to have a cognitive dissonance, you have to make several assumptions, like the person doesn't like what the person they are seeing is doing, and like if we take like political ideology, you don't know the political ideology of the participants, so you don't know if presenting him something from the extreme right or extreme left will create a dissonance. So it's very tricky question. What I think we should do is make sure that the main effect, the standard simple main effect, is true, and then trying to use moderators after. So this is more in the way of presenting the meta-analysis.
Very good. So thank you.
Thank you very much.